Sailors are always on the lookout for opportunities to break up the monotony and toil of long sea voyages by finding reasons to celebrate, and Christmas is certainly no exception to this rule. With the holiday season now upon us, I thought I would share with you 3 accounts of Yuletide festivities at sea. First up is Captain Fred Klegenbat with an account of a makeshift Christmas tree cobbled together by the crew of the bark Anna in 1906. "We ought to celebrate Christmas right and make a Christmas tree," said Carl Schroeder, top dog and the oldest sailor of the port forecastle. Chips, a traditional name for the ship's carpenter, was more than willing. He also had caught the Christmas spirit. At once he went to work to make a first-class base, and he handed me a piece of pine about 2 inches square and about 4 feet long. "Take a hatchet," said he, "and taper this stick off a little and then plane it." Next, we picked a piece of straight-grained soft pine about 1 foot long. We split this up into fine pieces and now notched the edges of these slivers to resemble pine needles. We managed to get a hold of some green paint and thinned this out with turpentine to paint the branches. Now we assembled the tree. Chips cut a very nice star out of a margarine can. This we mounted on top. Those days, everyone was familiar with cutting chains out of paper, and we did the same. We made neat little baskets out of the silver-colored wrappers of our tobacco packages. We had no nuts to insert in these, so we used iron ones instead. "We should hang cookies on the tree too," someone said. "I have it," another answered. "We can cut them out of this piece of yellow laundry soap. For sugar, we can pound up some rock salt from the salt meat barrel." A day or so after Christmas, one of the men of the starboard watch was lying in his bunk on his watch below. The more he looked at the tree and those cookies, the more he wanted to have one. Being in the starboard watch, he didn't know that we had cut them out of laundry soap and sprinkled them with rock salt sugar. "They won't miss one," he thought. He looked about. His shipmates seemed to be sound asleep. He untied a cookie and stuffed it into his mouth. Then, what a reaction. He choked and sputtered and spat and jumped out of his bunk and rushed for the fresh water bucket and cursed and swore, and what he had to say about the port watch was no one else's business, and the names he called them are not printed in any dictionary. A good laugh was had by all at this outcome of our Christmas party, and the rest of the cookies hung on the tree until well into the new year. Up next, we have R.B. Robertson sitting down to his Christmas dinner on a whaling ship just off Antarctica. At 3 o'clock, by which time nearly everybody on the ship had visited its unofficial social center, Mansell's cabin, we broke up the party and went up to the saloon to eat Christmas dinner. The ship had been decorated in the traditional way, with all the tinsel and tape and greenery that could be found, and the tables were covered with the usual cotton snow, crackers, silver bells, and angels. We all sat down beneath 2 huge flags, British and Norwegian, with an imitation Christmas tree between them. "What a lot of damned rot," commented old Burnett as people began to adjust foolish paper hats and the usual sounds of gaiety arose from the tables. "It's plain ridiculous to interrupt the work of the ship to pretend we're enjoying ourselves amongst all these damn fool decorations." But I knew that the best decorations of all, bunches of daffodils and green ferns, the only real flowers anywhere within 1,000 miles of that patch of desolate ocean, had been supplied by old Burnett himself, and I knew the care and trouble he had expended in growing them, and the acute anxiety he had suffered during the past few days, lest they should not be in full bloom in time for the Christmas dinner table. Finally, to finish things off, here is Eric Newby, opening his Christmas Eve presents, as is Scandinavian tradition, on board the 4-masted grain trader Moshulu. At 9 o'clock, we queued up outside the captain's stateroom to receive our Christmas presents from the missions to Seamen. This was the first time I had seen the officers' quarters, which seemed very warm and substantial compared with our own. When it was my turn to enter the great hall, I felt very serf-like and nervous, but my premonitions were soon dispersed. Inside it was all red plush, banquettes, and brass rails, very like the old Café Royal. I almost expected to see Epstein instead of the smiling and very youthful-looking captain, seated at the mahogany table, his officers all around him. He held out a hat to me full of pieces of paper. The one I took was number 7. "Number 7 for England's hope," said the captain, and the steward, who was kneeling on the floor, surrounded by parcels, handed me with a number 7 written on it. I wished everybody God Jewel and backed out of the stateroom in fine feudal fashion, stepping heavily on the toes of the man behind me, and dashed eagerly back to the forecastle to open it. Inside the paper wrappings was a fine blue knitted scarf, a pair of gray mittens, and a pair of stout brown socks. When I picked up the scarf, 3 bits of paper fell out. One of these was a Christmas card with Yuletide in prominent red lettering on one side, and on the other, in ink, a Norwegian or possibly Finnish inscription that I will not attempt to read here. On the other 2 pieces was the text of St. John chapter 20 in Finnish, and the good wishes of the missions to Seamen who had sent the parcel. Right at the bottom was a hand mirror and a comb. I thought of Einar Karlsson knitting woolies with loving care for unknown sailors in sailing ships. We all eagerly compared our presents. Some had thicker garments, some larger. Seldquist said that the mates had already appropriated the best, but no one paid any attention to this. Among us, Tanilla had the finest haul, a woolen helmet that pulled down over the ears with a long scarf attached. It made him look like a fiendish Finnish gnome. On Christmas morning, the weather was cold and brilliant. Big following seas were charging up astern in endless succession. They surged beneath the ship, bearing her up, filling the air with whistling spray as their great heads tore out from under and ahead, to leave her in a trough as black as polished basalt, except where, under the sternpost, the angle of the rudder made the water bubble jade green, as if from a spring. From the mizzen yard arm, where I hung festooned with photographic apparatus, I could see the whole midships of Mashulu. Rigid with cold, I descended to eat Christmas dinner, for which the cook had made an extra sustaining fruit soup. For breakfast, we had one of Pallenthorpe's tin sausages, which were very well received. At coffee time, apple tarts and buns, but not enough of either. For supper, rice, pastry, and jam. At 4 a.m. on what would have been Boxing Day in England, we were setting royals once more. The party was over. And with that, I am afraid that I too must return to work. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and I will see all of you next year.